So today is Monday, April 25th, and it's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is Jen from modernmedicinelady.com. And I am here to talk about a few things, but I wanted to start by just doing a little bit of centering and focusing and getting ourselves here. So whoever has joined me and is here, if you want to just take a moment to kind of close your eyes, and you don't have to close your eyes, but just sort of center yourself. And we're just going to start by taking a couple deep breaths. And I am a big fan of EFT and tapping. And so you can just tap on the karate chop point to just kind of help you to focus and ground and center. And we're just going to start by breathing in a breath of calmness and ease, and breathing it back out. And breathing in just ease and calmness. And again, breathing back out. And one more breath of calmness and ease. And again, just breathing back out. And just letting that calmness and that ease extend beyond you. And breathing it out around you. And just taking a moment to connect to whatever you consider that higher power, divine presence, source. Just breathing in that connection to something sacred to you. And then breathing it back out. So, welcome. This evening I wanted to talk a little bit about empathy, which is, I would say, sort of the raw form of intuition. And empathy is that ability to feel other people's feelings and pick up on what is going on around you. And I am of the belief that empathy, when unmanaged or unprotected, and when somebody doesn't really know how to use this quality within themselves, can really lead to a lot of, I have a piece of hair across the front of my lip, lovely, that empathy can really lead to a lot of confusion, a lot of emotional turmoil, a lot of anxiety, depression, and just a lot of really uncomfortable and difficult feelings to manage. And because we live in a culture that, especially over the last couple hundred years, has really been in denial about the idea that people could be sensitive to other people's feelings in a way that is not just by noticing, something concrete and present in the room, but that there are some of us who are sensitive to the extent that we pick up feelings that are not even being expressed obviously. And that we can be picking up on things that are even not happening in our vicinity, but that we're sensing things. And I think that thankfully there's more and more information that is going out into the world, and more people that are starting to connect about this, and who are recognizing empathy, who are recognizing the different qualities, the different clairs, which is the term for the sensory awarenesses, the sight that is beyond our ordinary five senses. And so there's more and more information going on out there, and I think that we're still very much at the beginning stages of really learning how to master our empathy, and subsequently learn how to use the empathy to guide our intuition, to guide our telepathy, to guide our clairvoyance, to guide our abilities to pick up on what is going on in the world, and to be able to use it as a tool as opposed to it being something that has got us continuously overwhelmed, overburdened, and not really sure where we begin and other people let off. So in my experience, one of the biggest challenges around being an empath or being a sensitive is that it can be extremely hard to distinguish what are my feelings, what am I picking up on, what's going on with me, and what are other people feeling, and where do I begin and where does the other person let off. And so sometimes a person can end up feeling really confused and really uncomfortable, and it's not even about them. And in the years that I've been doing my work, one of the things that I continuously run into are very intuitive, very sensitive, very empathic, and very, very, I've already said sensitive, but, psychic, for lack of a better word, people, particularly in my experience, more frequently women than men, who nobody ever shared that this was a possibility for them. And nobody ever said, did it ever occur to you that you're picking up on the feelings that other people are having? Did it ever occur to you that maybe this stuff isn't yours? Maybe, have you ever heard of an empath? This is what you are. And it has been amazing being able to talk to some of these people about what it means to be an empath and what it means to be experiencing it sort of and just kind of doing its thing without really knowing what it is. It's been very wonderful to see people go, oh my God, you gave me a name for what I am. Now that I know what I am, I can start handling this in a completely different way. Because if somebody doesn't realize that they are sensitive to other feelings that are going on around them, that they're sensitive to the people that are surrounding them and picking up on everything that's happening, then when they start having these feelings, generally they think it's coming from within, and their reaction generally is, oh my God, there must be something wrong with me. So where this unchecked is certainly a great challenge and can be quite difficult to manage, once somebody learns how to start working with this and recognizing it for what it is, which is a natural trait and another sense, the sixth sense, then what people can start to do is protect themselves, ground themselves, learn how to filter the information, and learn how to discern what is their own, what is mine, what is yours. And from there, what had been a great challenge and even might have felt like there was something defective or wrong becomes one of your greatest strengths. So I've been working, I guess I'll tell you guys a little bit about my own experience, which is that I have been a sensitive and been empathic my entire life. And I started having prophetic dreams and experiences about sensing things that were going to be happening when I was about 9 years old. And I grew up in a very standard, apple pie baseball, American town. We had more banks and churches in our town than we had anything else. We were a dry town. In our state, we were one of the few Republican towns in a Democratic state. And so while I grew up with fairly progressive and liberal parents, I grew up with, my parents were agnostic, and I grew up in a place where there was no language for any of this, but I was sensing things and I was picking things up and I was feeling things. And I didn't have any language for it and I didn't know what it was. So I was often feeling overwhelmed. I was feeling exhausted. I would tend to carry a little bit of extra weight on my body, which is something that a lot of sensitives do as a way to insulate and protect ourselves. And another thing that I noticed about myself was that time management was incredibly difficult for me. I was late almost all the time for everything. And people probably will say, well, Jen, you're still kind of late for things. But I mean, we're talking, I was generally a half hour, 45 minutes late for nearly everything when I was younger, whereas now I might be 5, maybe 15 minutes late. But what I realized was that I was exerting so much energy all the time that it was really affecting sort of my operating system, and it was affecting my ability to function and to cope, and that sort of my executive function was really compromised because I was always feeling and picking up on everything that was going on around me. So, for example, riding the subway, riding the train, riding the bus, being around a lot of other people was generally a pretty uncomfortable feeling because I would be sensing and picking up on things that other people were thinking, other people were feeling. And I would, even if I didn't have the ability to articulate it, it was still something that was taxing my system and affecting me. So it affected me in a lot of different ways. Like I said, time management was one of the issues. Needing a lot of sleep was another issue. And also having a lot of crazy dreams, trying to process a lot of stuff in the dream time. And then also, brain fog and having periods of time where it was just sort of feeling really scattered and really spacey and just really just disoriented and confused. And then when big events like, say, for example, 9/11, but when events like that or things that really large catastrophes were happening, I would generally have experiences where I would be feeling nervous and having anxiety attacks for a few days or a few weeks before the event happened, and just really being sensitive and not necessarily knowing what was going to be coming down the pike or what was going on. As I got older, I was really fortunate to find a woman who was also a sensitive, also an empath, who started to give me some tools and started to explain to me and show me and help me to start recognizing what was my own stuff, what were my own feelings, what were the things that I was feeling because for some legitimate reason something had come up for me. And then also, what was the stuff that I was picking up from the people around me, from the environment around me, from the things that were coming into the world. And that was an incredibly helpful thing. And then over time, I also started to recognize, as I had the experience of, I would have these senses of foreboding and this sense of anxiety and the sense of something coming, like just that feeling like something's going to be coming. And as things then happened, I started to be able to recognize I started to be able to recognize that feeling usually was the precursor to something coming down the pike. And as that happened for me, and as I started to recognize it, I started to be able to go, oh, okay, I'm having this feeling, I'm having these premonitions, I'm having this sense of something coming along. And then from that, I was able to start self-soothing. I was able to start calming myself and being able to basically allow myself to acknowledge the feelings, but not to just spin out into a place of just sheer anxiety. And so I would say that for me as a sensitive and as an empath, one of the really important lessons and one of the things I have spent a lot of time learning how to do is how to remain grounded and centered and calm no matter what is going on around me. And certainly there are times where it is a lot easier to do that than other times. And it isn't, I certainly feel like I am an ongoing work in progress, but a very big part of what I see the work for me as an empath is to learn how to be mindful of the information that is coming in and remain calm and to remain centered and to remain an anchor while this information is, while I'm still receiving information and picking up on it. So that's, a nice, fairly long spiel about my perceptions and experience about what empathy, when it's not working or when it is unmanaged, is going on, and then also the ability to remain calm and grounded, and also to be able to work with empathy, to use it for helping and supporting other people to recognize what's going on with them, being able to use it for helping and supporting other people in their healing work, also being able to anticipate directions that things are going, so that I can optimize and sort of use my intuition, use my empathy to make choices that are better choices, as opposed to being in a state where I'm generally in a state of reactivity and constantly trying to just sort things out and figure things out. So as I've mentioned, I've been working with empaths and working as an empathic woman myself for a number of years. And so I have created a system that I'm calling the empathy spectrum. And I've actually created a quiz that you can go take if this is ringing any bells for you or sounding really interesting to you. If you go to my website, www.modernmedicinelady.com, and you go check out there's a quiz. It says, what's your empathic type? And so if you go to that quiz, you can take it. It's got a number of questions that are all geared to help you to ascertain what your empathic type is, where you fall on the spectrum. And the way that I look at it is that, and I'm just going to drop the link in here. The way that I look at it, I'm also going to send it as a message. Okay. The way that I look at the spectrum is that, like any other spectrum, like any other quality, that people can be extremely something or not something. And most of us have a tendency to fall somewhere in the middle of it. And that when it comes to empathy and sensitivity, there are those of us that I would call extreme empaths, which is on the outer side of it. And I personally identify as what I would call an extreme empath, although I would say there are people that go even beyond that, where their sensitivity is so acute and so strong that they are picking up information, and that there's their ability distinguish between consensus reality and the stuff that they're sensing is really, it's almost impossible to discern. And these would be people where their experience, hi Terry, welcome. These are people where their experience would be even like what they would be having would be, say, hallucinations, because it's very hard to distinguish between what is the reality that ordinary people are having and what is the reality that somebody who's super sensitive is having. So I would say that's an even further out on the spectrum, but that I would say is not necessarily within the ordinary range of the spectrum. So I'm going to talk more about sort of the ordinary range of the spectrum in terms of natural tendencies or abilities. So the first category would be extreme empath, and these would be people who tend to be extremely sensitive to emotions, extremely sensitive to what is going on, tend to pick up feelings, tend to pick up thoughts, tend to pick up ideas, often can sense people living and dead, and sense people who've crossed over on the other side. A lot of times you'll know when the phone is going to ring. You can walk into a space and sense whether it is a safe place to be or not a safe place to be. Extreme empaths will have a tendency a lot of times to develop sensitivities to things. So it's not uncommon for extreme empaths to have allergies to things, for them to be very sensitive to their environment. And I would say, from what I've seen, autoimmune diseases are not uncommon amongst extreme empaths too. then they do not have their systems protected, because when you're constantly being bombarded, there's a point at which the alarm system is kind of going off and people end up on red alert. So the very important thing for being an extreme empath is really learning how to create a filter between self and other, and also how to distinguish and recognize what are my feelings and what are your feelings. And so the affirmation that I use for the extreme empath is, I can distinguish my thoughts and feelings from the rest of the world. I am whole and complete unto myself. Now, the second category is the supersensitive. And the supersensitive is not quite as inclined to pick absolutely everything up on that is going on in the room. But they are still deeply sensitive and deeply aware. And I think that they are going to be sensitive to being aware of what's happening in a room, how people are feeling. Because of this, they're generally going to have some really great social skills, but they also are going to be inclined towards caring deeply for people. And when somebody else is in pain, when somebody else is hurting, the supersensitive is the person who's going to really want to support and help and guide and feel responsible for other people. Now, if you're interested in learning a lot more about these, I have created a special report. And when you take the empathy quiz, the What's Your Empathic Type quiz, and you sign up, you will receive my report, which goes into greater detail. And if I do say so myself, it's really, really pretty. I spent a lot of time really working on the graphics for this to create something really special. So with the supersensitive, the affirmation that I use for her is, I release the burdens I carry for others while I still honor their concerns with love and compassion. So the supersensitive's work is a lot about learning how to have compassion without taking it all on for oneself. And then the next level at the spectrum, and I would say this is sort of kind of the more sort of towards the average place that sort of more people are going to sort of fall within the bell curve. Although I think because I tend to attract empaths, I've been noticing that most of the people who are doing the quiz are actually extreme empaths. But the compassionate carer is the third level, and this is somebody who actually is able to, has more of a filter in place. Their system is not completely wide open. So as a result, they have an ability to be sensitive and aware and mindful of other people's concerns, but at the same time, their boundaries are more naturally in place. And I guess the way I would think of it is that it's almost like a combination of a receiver that is tuned to receive noise, and that the extreme empath and the supersensitive have equipment that is so sensitive it's picking up the quietest little bits of sound or the quietest little bits of information. And as a result, a lot of times it's just so loud because it's like the radio is turned up too loud. So the supersensitive and the extreme empath, they've got their radio dialed up to like 11 on a scale of 0 to 10. Whereas the compassionate carer, they probably have their radio dialed to about a 6 or a 7. They're sensitive, they're picking up, they're aware of what's going on, but they've got more of a filter and more of a sense of protection. So the compassionate carer is in a place where they can actually really use this gift already and use the sensitivity, and don't necessarily need as much support for learning how to manage their empathy as much as they need support for learning how to open more, maybe to receive more information and to know how to work with it. And I think that they are natural leaders a lot of the time, and they are people who are really good at because they're sensitive enough to sense what's going on in a room and read need a room, they can work with that, but at the same time, they are not being overwhelmed and overstimulated by it. So the affirmation that I use for the compassionate carer is, I share my gifts with confidence and ease. My enthusiasm is a spark that inspires others. Now, as we move down the spectrum and we move away from that, on a scale of 0 to 10, the 11 of sensitivity with the extreme empath, and we move further toward these more natural receptivity to other people's feelings and more of a sense of the boundary between self and other, we come to the pragmatic perceiver. And the pragmatic perceiver is going to be sensitive or pick up some energies of what's going on around them, and would certainly be aware if somebody was having a meltdown around them, they'd know that it was going on, and they'd probably be impacted by it. They would, if they were watching a sad movie, they would watch the movie and something would move them and they would cry about that movie, but they're not going to be walking sitting on a bus or walking into Walmart or something and suddenly just become flooded with other people's feelings. And the pragmatic perceiver is really in a wonderful position to be able to care about other people, sense what's going on with other people, and also has a really sturdy set of boundaries and sturdy set of psychic filters that protects them. And I am gratefully married to a pragmatic perceiver, and who uses that capacity to tune in and perceive without being overwhelmed by everybody else's emotions. And it is a really nice balancing point as an extreme empath to be partnered with somebody who is less empathic than I am. And the pragmatic perceiver's words or affirmation is, I behold the world with my mind and my heart. It is by logic and love that I am truly whole. So, that's the pragmatic perceiver. And then the final person or the final place on the notch on the spectrum, because I've sort of broken it into 5 different categories, is the objective observer. And the objective observer is more of the scientific oriented person, the person who tends to be very rational, very reasonable, the person who tends to be like, hey, if it's not concrete, if it's not physical, if it's not here in the world, then I don't believe in it. Prove that it exists. And these are people who tend to be very concrete, very rational, very practical, very, very objective in their perception of the world, and don't tend to pick up on other people's feelings, don't tend to sense what's going on around them. And they are, as a result, they're they can be a great support when you want somebody who can look at things from a completely different perspective than somebody who is more sensitive and more empathic and more emotionally driven. So I don't know if you ever watched the Star Trek where we had Next Generation with Deanna Troi. Obviously, she was an empath, and the way that she worked was using her empathic abilities to sense what was going on and to pick up on other people's feelings and to even feel them and articulate them for people when they could not speak them themselves. So that's an extreme empath. And then staying with the Star Trek theme, the objective observer would be Mr. Spock. And I actually think in some ways that you could say that I don't know whether I'd say it would be the compassionate care, that Data might have actually been sort of the compassionate carer, or possibly the pragmatic perceiver, but Data's desire to feel emotions and the desire to sense what was going on, that in many ways Data was a lot more really striving for empathy in a way that, Spock didn't need to be empathic. Spock did not want to be empathic. Spock used his incredible powers or observation to obviously continuously get Kirk out of trouble. But I would say that Spock really would be the objective observer. And so the affirmation that I use for objective observer is, I choose to be open to perceiving the world in a new and delightfully unexpected way. Now, they may not want to do that. This is certainly, that would be an affirmation that an extreme empath would offer up to an objective observer. And basically, I think in most cases, or in a lot of cases, objective observers are perfectly content being where they are. And as the saying goes, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that is my rundown of the 5 empathic types and the empathic spectrum. And as I said before, if this is grabbing you, if you're finding this interesting, please go take my What's Empathic Type quiz, find out where you fall on the spectrum, and then sign up to receive my empath sensitivity report, and you can read all about, I go into a lot of depth with all of it, and you can get a sense of where you fall with this. So all of that said, I know that Terry, you are here, and I'm not sure who else is on. I can see that we've got a number of viewers, but Terry's the only one that I can see is on with me. I do have my cards here with me. One thing I did want to talk a little bit about before I started answering questions or going into some cards was to just talk about that I believe that what is absolutely crucial, no matter where we fall on the empathy spectrum, is that we learn how to care for ourselves and that we learn how to manage these abilities by establishing effective filters, by releasing the emotions that get stuck inside of us that often are coming from other sources, other people, other places, and to be able to release the feelings that we get. You know, as an empath, not only are we going to experience and carry around our emotions from events that happen to ourselves, but we're going to carry around the stuff that we're picking up on other people as well. And so in the same way that it's so important to forgive and release events and experiences that happened, to release difficulties, to be able to let go of the anxiety, to be able to let go of the fear of the stuff that we actually experienced. As an empath, a lot of times we need to let go of the stuff that we've picked up on with other people and from other people as well. Now, some of this is stuff that you can totally DIY, and some of this is stuff that you really, I know for me, I really benefit greatly by working with other people and getting support and getting help, because I didn't necessarily get myself into this mess. I'm not necessarily going to get myself out of or I didn't get myself into this mess alone. I'm not going to get myself out of this mess alone. And so I think that there are tools that you can use to protect yourself and guide yourself. But when it comes to going in and really, really releasing the stuff that is stuck and has got you spinning your wheels, it can be incredibly helpful to find a good healer, a good guide, a good mentor, somebody who you really jibe with, that you really feel good about, that you feel comfortable with, that you can work with, who can really support you in getting to a place where you feel calm, where you feel grounded, where you feel safe, so that then you can move forward without being in a state of reactivity all the time. So that is at least that's sort of my basic talk about the necessity and the importance of self-care, which I really believe. I believe self-care starts first by us learning how to soothe the parts of us that are agitated, and then release things that are stuck and that need to be moved out, where we're carrying around a lot of extra stuff. And then after we have soothed and released, we then go to nourishment and support, so that we can we can revitalize ourselves and we can restore ourselves, and then we can connect to our creative process and move past that. But I really see it as sort of a process that goes, first we have to calm and soothe, then we need to purify and release, and then we go to nourish and restore and to make that divine connection, and then really go to that place of really knowing how to work with our intuition and use it as a talent and a tool and a skill, as opposed to something that's just constantly derailing us and throwing us off. So that's my spiel about self-care. So I have some cards with me if anybody is interested in getting some cards read. If you are on this call and you have either, I believe, a Facebook handle or a Twitter handle, and you want to sign on in that way, then I can see you and you can write in questions on the side, and you can ask me you can ask a question, and or you can ask me to do a reading for you. Terry, since you're here and reading, yeah. Is there anything, Terry, that is there anything that you are thinking about in particular that you would like to focus on? I'm just shuffling the deck. Full moon? No kidding. What a doozy of a moon. Oh, you saw a snake on Saturday. Awesome. Transformation and rebirth, shedding your skin. Okay. So without even pulling a card, the immediate thought that comes to my mind is, I think there's going to be some branding tweaking going on for you. You know, as you think about the idea of the snake shedding its skin, you know, and that there's the way that the snake, when the snake outgrows the form that it's in, it releases its skin in order to expand. And I just immediately get that you are expanding your offerings, you're expanding your process, that you are growing. And so there's going to be, I don't think it's a total rebrand. It's not like you're going to change names or, you know, there's going to be some adjustments to taglines perhaps, and also some color adjustments, it's more about tweaking the brand that you already have and looking at brand consistency in regards to your website for your program. Yep. And so really looking at continuity of all of it, continuity, and whether or not everything is reinforcing, but also allowing for the magnitude of what you're creating. You are creating something really just delicious, and it's like this big vessel. It's like this big vase that's designed to hold tons of, just like this big goddess vase that's designed to hold tons of beautiful flowers, and to accommodate something just really juicy and beautiful. And so I think that you maybe the snake came flying by as a way to say, you're thinking too small, Terry. You're ready for even bigger. You're ready for something even bigger and even more amazing and even more divine. Yeah, you can own that. Okay, so I'm going to pull a card for you. Okay, I got the Four of Pentacles card, which is the obviously because of the way, although I don't know if you can see this if it's mirrored for you or if you're actually seeing it accurately, but I call it the Control card, and it's a little dark. Okay. Yes, well, and it was shot in darkness. If you look, you can see there's this monkey mind, and the monkey is holding on to 4 bags. the bag, there's one bag sort of, crammed with stuff between their legs. And then one arm is grabbing one big grocery bag. The other bag, there's another bag in the other arm. And then they even have a bag of groceries in their head. They are just trying desperately to hold it all together. And the way that I look at this card is that it is saying you have all the resources that you need, but when you're clutching onto them in a particular way where you're sort of trying to control the way they're working, it's like the control prevents you from being able to access the resources. So I always see this as a card of ultimately reminding you or encouraging you to trust and encouraging you to put down the bags in order to be able to reach in and grab the specific resource that you need and focus on one resource at a time in order to move to the next thing. So I would also be willing to bet that there is some request or some suggestion for you to consider delegation of responsibility. If there's places where there's things that you do not shine at, that you're not absolutely brilliant at, that's not your genius, to think about who can support you in doing this and where can you get some additional help. But I'm also really seeing this as suggesting parsing things out and really thinking about sort of chunking it down or breaking it down to sort of the one tool or the one resource at a time. Because I know that you have a toolbox that is remarkably full and that you have an incredible amount of resources available to you, it's going to be natural for you to be thinking in terms of how can you use all of these different resources. I mean, that's just, of course you will. And I'm seeing this card as a suggestion that it could be very helpful right now to think in terms of one resource at a time and sort of work with sort of using it. Yeah, if we hold on too tight, the expansion can't happen. It's also the whole thing of the inhale and the exhale. If we just keep inhaling and inhaling and inhaling and we never exhale, it's the reciprocity never happens. We're never allowed to, the sequence never happens. And also, if you think about sand, anytime you grab sand in your hand and you're trying to hold it too tight, it just goes through your fingers. But in this particular case, I think it's also when holding on too tight, when muscles, you cannot use them. And in this case, this person is so, and this, by the way, was me. There were a few cards I decided to be, and I actually I took on the responsibility of taking on a few of the more challenging cards. But, in this case, it's like my arms were so full of stuff and trying to safeguard and protect the stuff that I couldn't use my hands. I could not be my own advocate because I was so invested in holding on to all of this other stuff. And it's totally like monkey mind, holding on to your stuff and not trusting to let go in order to allow things to move forward. So the good news about this card is that it is basically saying you have every single resource you need at your disposal. You're fine. You're all good. Now it's just a matter of allocation in order to use these resources in an effective way. So I just really, between now and transform, I mean, wow, what is going to be happening? It's just like, I think you're going to be like the possibilities, the expansiveness of what you are going to be walking into and what you're bringing to Atlanta is going to be amazing. And I'm so excited for you. Infinite possibilities, absolutely. You are so welcome, and thank you so much for being here and jumping on the call. It is such a pleasure to see you here. Yay, thank you. Yeah, I was having fun. So I am going to, what I think I'm going to do, didn't get anybody else jumping on the call to get a reading, is that I am going to pull another card that's going to be the what do you want to focus on for the week card for all of us. The card that I have pulled for this week for people is the Priestess reversed. And the Priestess is the card of the inner knowing, the inner wisdom, the inner guidance, and is the card of intuition. And what occurs to me is that we just crossed over from a Scorpio moon, a full moon in Scorpio, that was really intense for a lot of people, really affecting a lot of people. And now we are in the period of the moon waning. So the moon is now decreasing and going towards the dark moon. At this point in time, I would have to look at my calendar to be 100% sure, but we're probably, if we are in a, I believe we are in a Sag moon by now. We might even be all the way over into a Capricorn moon. Hang on, I'm just going to pull up that information so that I'm accurate. Sorry, I didn't do it before I jumped on this call. That would have been a smart, or this blab. That would have been smart. The moon is in Sagittarius, and it's going to remain in Sagittarius until 4/26. So a moon in Sagittarius is actually a good moon for getting stuff done because there's a fair amount of energy in Sag. It's a fire sign, and it's that adventurous, powerful energy. But with this Priestess reversed, the reversed cards are a lot of times about what you want to tune, what you want to be working on, what you want to be integrating, how you want to be coming to understand things. So I would say that this is a card that's saying you may be having a little bit of difficulty accessing your inner wisdom right now. You may be having a little bit of difficulty accessing your intuition, and really giving yourself the space to tune in, giving yourself the space to quiet down and really go deep within to find your guidance is going to be important this week. And part of this is also that, so we've got this fiery, energetic moon that is going to be, and we're still close to the full moon, although we're moving away from it. But this fiery moon is going to be sort of noisy in a way, and not necessarily, and so it sort of draws away from the ability to sort of tune into that still wisdom within the self. But then we also have some other really interesting things going on with a couple retrogrades, one being Mars retrograde. And Mars retrograde, Mars is the planet of fight, sort of fight, or, it's like aggression, it's passion, it's power, it's going out into the world. And when Mars goes retrograde, it has a tendency to kind of dampen that energy. So a retrograde Mars, in my personal opinion, is, and I will say I'm not an astrologer, but I play one on TV. I've been around astrology for a super, super long time. And some people would even say, you might, I mean, I've been playing with astrology for a long time, but I always will say there are people who know astrology way more than I do. But my sense of retrograde Mars is that it's an opportunity to approach conflicts, to approach situations that need to be reconciled and resolved, and actually go and make peace, because the Mars retrograde will keep you from flying off the handle. Particularly if you're somebody with a very strong Mars influence in your chart, having the Mars retrograde can allow you to remain calmer, to sort of hold the reins on that aggressiveness that Mars tends to have. So that is one thing that you can work with right now. And then also Saturn is retrograde right now. I will say that Saturn retrograde is such a common factor that it is not necessarily like where Mercury retrograde tends to throw everything, your wrenches into the works. Saturn retrograde is something that we sort of go in and out of. And the Saturn retrograde is a really good time for reevaluating your structures, reevaluating your foundations, and really looking at what is working, what is not working. And with the Mars retrograde, being able to use that energy to reconcile conflict. And so going back to talking about this priestess, there's a lot of different energies where there's some stuff that's afoot. And I like to think of reversed cards also as like retrograde cards. So talking to you about the idea of these retrogrades, working the retrograde as opposed to having it work you. Now, that said, I just want to mention to you that before I blab with you again next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have a Mercury retrograde coming, and that's it's starting on April 28th, and Mercury retrograde is going to be running from the 28th of April. Let's see, I've got it marked in my calendar because I think it is so important. And it is going to May 22nd. So Mercury is going to be retrograde from Thursday, April 28th to Sunday, May 22nd. And Mercury retrogrades tend to affect machinery. They tend to affect communication. They tend to affect sort of the operating systems of things and the smooth running of stuff. So it is not a good time to buy a computer. It is not a great time to necessarily be doing repairs on your computer and stuff like that. But in my experience, it's a really good time for deep exploratory writing and for doing stuff that you may be ordinarily, life is so busy and hectic and moving that you don't necessarily have the time. A Mercury retrograde is a great time to go inward and to use that reversed high priestess energy to really dive into what's going on deeper and reveal it and draw it out from the surface. Because I like to think of, it's like, the way I think of a retrograde is in a similar way as like dark, you can see the stars at night. You can't see them during the day. And so with, during the day, you see the sun, everything is clear, everything is visible. You've got all this accessibility to see things, but you can't necessarily see as far. And I think of retrogrades and also reversals in tarot as almost like it's a way that you can see beyond what you ordinarily can see. And it's a way that you can access something because there isn't the ordinary interference of sort of day-to-day static and day-to-day existence. So all of this said, this is a good week to find some time to get quiet, to go within, to find that still small voice, and to really listen to what is going on in your heart, what is going on in your mind, what's really happening for you. So hopefully that's clear to you guys, and what I'm saying is making sense, and it will give you an excuse and an opportunity to take some quiet time for yourself so that you can really examine what's going on. So we are coming in towards the end of the hour. If anybody has any questions that they want to throw out, or anybody wants to jump on so that I can see them, I would be happy to pull another card. And if not, I will tell you that I will be back next week at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another blab. And I will be talking about some aspect of empathy and intuition. Don't quite know what it is that I want to tell you right at this very moment. And I will be answering questions and pulling cards later in the day. And also you can stay tuned because I will be bringing another guest on within the next couple weeks, and we have something, it's a surprise right now, but we've got something really, really exciting in store for you. So looks like we are not, there's no more questions coming in and nobody's jumping on the call at the moment. So I just want to thank all of you who jumped on and have been watching today. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to learn more about the kind of work that I do, please check out my website, www.modernmedicinelady.com. And also go take my What's Your Empathic Type quiz so that you can really see where you fall on the spectrum, and sign up to receive your report, your free report of the empath sensitivity report, so that you can really get a feeling for where you land in all of this. And Terry, again, thank you so much for being here. And by the way, I'm just going to make a plug for Terry, who has a really great radio program called Catch Your Spirit Radio, which also happens on Monday. And I had the privilege of being on her show the other day. It was really awesome, and she's on Blog Talk Radio. So it is, and I highly recommend listening to her radio show. And actually, she just interviewed a dear friend of mine, Carrie Mitchell, earlier today, and I can't wait to listen to it. I'm really looking forward to it because I am sure that it was an absolutely amazing radio program, because Terry and Carrie are both awesome people. So yeah, check it out, Catch Your Spirit Radio. And Terry, if you want to throw your link into the bottom of that message, that would be great. And so that anybody who's interested can see it. Yay. So people, it is just a little bit shy of, we got 3 minutes to the top of the hour, and I think I am going to bid you all adieu. I hope that you have a magnificent week. I wish you brightest blessings and peace to you and yours, and I look forward to connecting with whoever decides to land here next week at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And like I said, in the meantime, go take my What's Your Empathic Type quiz. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye.